Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted. From Packers.com, I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to review, Wes, a 30-13 victory on Sunday Night Football at Seattle. A big one for Green Bay. It gets the Packers to 10-4. We'll talk about the whole playoff scenarios and situations later on. But with this win on the road against a team that was leading the NFC West, this one starts with how fast the Packers started. Drive for a touchdown, or win the toss, take the ball, drive for a touchdown, a third down sack, you get the ball back, you drive for another touchdown, and this game was 14-0 before Seattle had run offensive play number 6 or whatever the case was. A big-time start on the road, and that carried Green Bay to a big win.
I don't think there's ever been, again, I'm not patting us on the back, I'm just saying in terms of us, in general, anybody outlining the keys to victory for the Packers, I don't know if we've ever had an episode of Final Thoughts that hit everything on the head as well as this one did. The Packers checked every box.
Yeah, they did.
That first quarter was about as picture perfect as what you could have asked for Green Bay to start a football game. And it was interesting listening to Matt LaFleur talk about it after the game. You know, the first 3 plays were pretty much what was scripted. And then after that, he just started riding Josh Jacobs because Seattle couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
And you end up having a 10-play, I think it was 63-yard scoring drive that finishes with a 1-yard Josh Jacobs touchdown run. And for the third time this season, he had over 100 yards from scrimmage in the first half. The first time since week 13 of last season, the Packers scored on their back-to-back opening possessions, scored touchdowns on back-to-back opening possessions.
Right.
That stadium, Mike, you've been there more times than I have. This was my 4th trip to what is now known as Lumen Field. I've been in there during the NFC Championship game in the 2014-15 season. It can get loud. It can get boisterous. It can be a very difficult environment to play in. And there was no shortage of a dozen Go Pack Go chants throughout that game from beginning, middle, and end. It wasn't perfect. There's things Green Bay needs to clean up yet. But in terms of checking every box that the Packers needed to open up this game, especially after a week in which Seattle had put up 17 points in the first quarter against Arizona, Matt LaFleur could not have been much happier with what he saw in those first 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll definitely comment on the fans because, as you said, I have been to that stadium numerous times. It had been 6 years since we had been there, but I said this in Insider Inbox, I have never seen a Green Bay Packer contingent that strong in that stadium before. It was really something. You mentioned we could hear the Go Pack Go chants in the press box, and then when it really hit me is actually the next day after the game, I was watching, the full highlight package that we have on our website, which is with the TV calls and everything like that. And every highlight in that package where the Packers are making a big play, you can hear the crowd through the TV broadcast. Games in Seattle are not like that. And so hats off to the Packers fans who showed up and showed out for that game, because that was really something, because that was an NFC West a division leading Seattle Seahawks team with a heck of a lot on the line. It's prime time at their place late in the season, and the Packers fans were a big time story in that game.
And it wasn't even like the Bears situation where they've just unraveled and they're in this losing streak that won't end. Seattle had won 4 in a row going into this thing. I want to ask you this, and we got to get back to this game too, but the drive up to the game, I don't know how much time or how much you paid attention to people in the street as we were driving up. That was my first indicator here that this thing's going to be different. There was so much green and gold and so many cheeseheads when we were just simply driving through Seattle from our team bus trying to get into the stadium.
Yeah. We had a fairly short ride from the downtown hotel to the stadium, where I started to realize it, Wes, I'll be honest, both Saturday night and during the day on Sunday before going to the stadium, I was spending a lot of time with my brother-in-law. He lives out in Seattle. And, we were kind of out and about walking around, both in the evening on Saturday as well as then during the day on Sunday. And it started to hit me even going down to the market and the waterfront. They've done a whole nice reconstruction, whole redevelopment of the waterfront down there. just walking around, I was seeing so many Packer sweatshirts, Packer jackets, Packer caps and stuff. And I started to realize maybe this game is going to be a little bit different. I wasn't really paying that much attention on the bus ride. I was probably in my phone looking at other scores of the games that were going on, whatever. But Saturday night and during the day on Sunday, I definitely started to get a sense like there are more Packers fans. It was the type of thing that we had seen in LA, in Jacksonville, other places like earlier this season. Not the kind of thing we've seen in Seattle before, but I started to get that feeling, and it turned out to be true.
And I think probably what influenced me too is I did the pep rally the night before when you were spending some time with family.
Yeah.
And a great turnout for it. Our Packers everywhere folks. Brandon Markin did a tremendous job putting it on, but it was being out there as well. And how many people came up to me after the pep rally and talked about, and this is the point I'm trying to make with this, it had been 6 years since the Packers have played there.
Yeah.
There was a time where the Seattle almost felt like a pseudo NFC North team.
Yeah.
And there were so many people that came up to me on the West Coast saying, they don't get out to Green Bay. How excited they were that the Packers were finally back. People from California, Oregon, and obviously Seattle and Tacoma and Washington. And people showed out, man. That is something that I honestly, there were so many positive things that happened in this game that needed to be written about, needed to be touched on. But I'll tell you what, man, I was probably this close from actually just doing a notebook lead on what that crowd was like, because so many guys afterwards said it really did feel like a home game, the amount of go Pack, go chants, and especially not just like randomly when the offense was on the field. I mean, Geno Smith and Seattle's offense had to deal with it right away. The defense for Green Bay felt it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was we've seen it in other places, not in Seattle before, and that's what made this one pretty special. You mentioned the opening drive, 10 plays for the touchdown finished by Josh Jacobs. Jacobs gets the ball on 9 of the 10 plays. I mean, you talk about workhorse. But also, as you said, Seattle wasn't stopping him. So the Packers were, while he was fresh and everything, and if the Seahawks weren't going to be able to stop him, the Packers were going to feed him the football. The Packers won the battle up front, not just with Jacobs, but in also how they were protecting Jordan Love, and Jordan Love had a pretty clean game back there in the pocket.
Love played extraordinary, and being able to establish the run, I thought really set up Jordan for a lot of what he accomplished in this game. And when you have those type of weapons and you establish, Josh Jacobs as a pass catcher as well early on, I felt like that's what started to open things up for them a little bit more. You got Jaden Reed back involved after last week. They were struggling to do that. Some of the big plays were there again with Christian Watson, including a defensive pass interference penalty. Both him and then at the end of the first half with the one that Romeo Doubs drew, both of those plays were critical, even though they ultimately don't show up in the box score, but contributed to 6 points. And 6 points that, while you want to finish those drives, are what kind of countered what Jason Myers had did with making his 2 field goals for Seattle. And I don't think enough can be said about Romeo Doubs being able to come back off the concussion, going through the protocol, deciding to wear the Guardian cap, wanting to be better safe than sorry. The first touchdown, he plows through 2 Seattle defenders to get into the end zone to finish that drive, to put his team up 14-0. And then coming down the stretch, when Green Bay was kind of faltering a little bit offensively, he was able to punch that in as well, makes a tremendous catch in the back of the end zone. Only 3 catches for 40 yards, but it's those type of things that you've come to expect from Doubs, and Love's ability to navigate through all that and find his right receivers, find the guys he wanted to go to with the football. I just felt like, and as Matt LaFleur said, they're not throwing the ball as much as they did last year, but I thought the way that Jordan did it, and I think completing 17 of his first 19 in this game, it was so effective at just managing the situations, and especially early on, being able to control the tempo of that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a big time performance from Doubs coming back after missing the 2 games. He gets in the end zone twice in very different ways, but a showcase of his abilities, both as a pass catcher and as just a powerful athlete. And then with Christian Watson, I actually just posted a story on our website shortly before we turned the cameras on here. Watson now, over a 5-game stretch, this is 5 games, he is averaging like 30 yards per catch right now. Like he has become a big play machine. Plus the long play, the pass interference that ended up being a 39-yard gain. I thought Watson, the way he adjusted to the ball in the air on the sideline throw and then was able to make the catch and tap the toes and stay in bounds. I thought that was a tremendous play. And then not one of the bigger plays, but a shorter play that converted a third down where he makes the diving catch on the extended play with Love, sort of throwing a low throw to keep it away from the defender, and Watson goes down and grabs it, moves the chains there, keeps the drive alive. Christian Watson is really, really coming into his own offensively. On the defensive side, this one starts with Edger and Cooper. And as you said, we sort of set the stage for a lot of things that we talked about last week going into this one. And we had talked about Cooper being back at practice. It was looking like he was going to play, and what kind of a chess piece that he can be for Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator, and how he's used in the pass rush, how he's used dropping into coverage. And boy, Edger and Cooper played a whale of a game, a super high impact game. Had the sack early, had the interception late, making other plays in between. Big time performance from the rookie who, as everybody is saying, is just starting to scratch the surface of the player he can become.
And as Matt LaFleur said too, it wasn't just what he did on defense. His first play back was a special teams coverage tackle. He finished with 2 coverage tackles in this game as well. It seems like every time we talk about Edger and Cooper, when he had some injuries early on this season, then he misses the 3 games with the hamstring. But when he comes back, the way this defense performs, the way they play, it is different. It looks different. It feels different. And their ability to sprinkle him in, where he plays 34 defensive snaps in this game. He has 5 tackles, 2 for loss. He has 2 passes defensed. He finishes the interception after he drops the first one. He has the first of 7 sacks that Green Bay has defensively. When you look for guys that are going to not only be explosive playmakers, but really kind of energize your defense, that's what he does with his speed, with his athleticism. And so many times, Mike, I look at that box score and I look at his bio on our website, and it says 6'2", 228, 29 pounds. When you stand next to him, when you watch him play, does he look like somebody who's 6'2", 230 pounds? I would have said he's 6'4", 240 like Quay Walker is.
Yeah.
It's just, he is just an explosive athlete.
Yep.
So whether he's trailing guys in coverage, whether they're using him as that third down option as a potential inside linebacking blitzer, the guy continually makes plays, and now this week is up for the NFL Rookie of the Week award, which fans can vote on. I said it to a person on Twitter. I believe it was either on Sunday night or it was on Monday. Days kind of get messed up here with how everything's been going.
Just a tad.
But he reminds me so much right now of how Dom Capers utilized Clay in 2015 when they were starting to transition him back to outside linebacker, but they would still use him as an inside option every once in a while. You don't know where Edger and Cooper is coming from. You don't know where and when Jeff Hafley is going to deploy him.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it really dangerous. There will come a time where he will be an every down player of this defense. It may still even be this season with Quay Walker's injury coming up here. But for right now, this guy is giving you everything you could want and more from a rookie second-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you totally that the Packers defense just looks different when he's out there on the field. You mentioned the 7 sacks. Packers continually pressuring Geno Smith, and then also backup Sam Howell when Smith went out of the game. He ends up leaving the game on a pressure by Edger and Cooper. The 7 sacks, Kingsley Enagbari gets 2 of them of Howell on the same series. Devontae Wyatt gets a sack. Rashawn Gary gets one. Carl Brooks gets a whole bunch of pressures. One of his pressures sets up the Gary sack. Another one of his pressures, along with Eric Wilson, sets up the bad throw that Carrington Valentine picks off in the end zone. The second-year corner, Valentine, he gets the first interception of his career. Couldn't have come at a better time in a lot of ways. The Packers are in control of the game. It's 17-3, but you're late in the first half. The Seahawks are going to get the ball coming out of halftime because the Packers had elected to receive when they won the toss at the beginning of the game. And the Seahawks are in the red zone on third down. You're looking at minimum, it's going to be 17-6, possibly 17-10 if the Seahawks get a score there. And Valentine reads the sort of desperation throw toward the back corner of the end zone. Smith is throwing off his back foot because of the pressure from Brooks and Wilson. and he's trying to hit Noah Fant, the tight end, going towards the back corner, and Evan Williams is guarding Fant. Valentine is on Smith-Jigba, but he sees where the ball is headed, and he peels off his guy, makes a leaping interception in the end zone. Huge turning point in the game, quite frankly, because then the Packers ended up going into halftime up 20-3. It was a 3-score game at intermission.
I wasn't able to get much into it just based on all the content that we had going up, but I thought Xavier McKinney was really good on this after the game because he talked about how a lot of the deception they were doing with their safeties was causing Geno Smith and then eventually Sam Howell a lot of problems. They couldn't delineate or decipher when the Packers were in too high or single high, and they got caught in that. It almost led the first time to the Carrington Valentine pick.
Yeah, it was the play right before.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they come back the next play, and as you said, there was so much pressure there, and Geno made a mistake. He put that thing out there, and Carrington, much to his credit, this is a guy that still was chasing his first, I should say chasing because he wasn't chasing, but he's still looking for his first NFL interception.
Yeah.
He bounces back from what should have been, a potential, definitely an interception. You only know how far he might have been able to take that thing if he picks it off clean, to being able to bounce back the next play and get it. Matt LaFleur jokingly said, well, not jokingly, he was serious, but said he wishes Carrington would have stayed in the end zone after he intercepted it.
Take the touchback there, young man.
Still took it back out to the 14, obviously excited about it. I talked with Carrington about the play afterwards. He said it was about darn time that he finally got that interception, but I thought that was a really good reward for him because this is a guy that has played a lot of critical, important football, considering he was a 7th-round pick a year ago out of Kentucky, who was an early entrant that didn't have a ton of college stats, and it was all based on potential. And he's come into the door and played really well for Green Bay out of the stretch. And also, not having Jair Alexander, you needed somebody like that to step up, and Valentine did.
Yeah, that was a big time play for sure. The Packers nearly dominated this game from start to finish. It ended up that they didn't. Unfortunately, some mistakes happened in the second half. I just want to say this though. I'm not excusing the mistakes the Packers made, but I am really tired of the narrative out there that Matt LaFleur supposedly just wants to sit on a lead, and that's why these teams are always coming back. You have to look at what happened. There was a play action rollout, aggressive call, down the field throw. Jordan Love just missed it with Romeo Doubs being open on the rollout to the right. It happens. Poor execution, throw wasn't quite there, wasn't able to make the catch. Josh Jacobs has a huge hole. Maybe he gets tripped by the guy on the ground, maybe he doesn't, I'm not sure, but he ends up stumbling, and then the ball gets punched out and you get a turnover. Later in the fourth quarter, a 3rd and 2, Packers go aggressive, they're going to throw the ball. And unfortunately, Jaden Reed, who is going to be wide open because the Seahawks are totally committed to stopping Josh Jacobs on 3rd and 2. Reed is going to be wide open, but unfortunately he slips, falls down on his route. The pass just falls harmlessly incomplete. The Packers made mistakes that didn't allow them to put this game away any earlier, but this narrative about how it was their approach or it was the play calling or whatever, just stop with that nonsense. That is not why the Seahawks got back into the game. They got back into the game because of some mistakes the Packers made. They were trying to be aggressive, had plays there that could be made. They weren't made. The defense faltered once, really, in my opinion, just faltered the one time, allowing the Charbonnet touchdown run after the Jacobs fumble. But then after that, the defense rose up, was getting the sacks of Howell, got the interception by Cooper. So the Packers were this close, in my opinion, to completely dominating that game from start to finish. And they know the mistakes they made. And quite frankly, as much as Matt LaFleur always likes to credit the opponent, the mistakes the Packers made in not putting this game away were just on themselves.
Yes.
They 100% were just on themselves. It wasn't what the Seahawks were doing, in my opinion. So the way this game started was a huge step forward for the Green Bay Packers as they look to make the playoffs and try to make a playoff run. They still know there's just that little bit more out there for them because they did let a team back in the game that probably shouldn't have been in the game. Sorry for the long diatribe. I just had to get that out there because I'm tired of the way it has been talked about amongst this fan base in terms of why these things happen. You just have to look at it. You have to understand the facts and how things actually occur before your criticism is worthwhile.
And my dad said it too after the game, or I should say the day after we got back to Green Bay. I went and ate dinner with my parents, and he said, he's like, they played well. It's a human game, and there's going to be, for all the things that went wrong for Seattle, there were a few things that went wrong for Green Bay too. I thought what was more important though was how Green Bay's defense picked up the offense in the second half. When Seattle had chances, mostly the Packers defense held them in check. Charbonnet breaks out that 24-yard.
That was the one play. The defense was holding them to field goals and getting stops otherwise. The one play was the Charbonnet touchdown run that got out the back end. Other than that, I thought the Packers defense really held them in check for the bulk of the game.
Well, and as I said to you, as we were getting ready to board the plane, and I felt like, 7 layers of hell. Like the Packers, Geno Smith got hurt. I get it. Sam Hull came in and did not play well.
No.
But you got to play the team that's out there. The Packers were in a situation, much like Keyshawn Nixon said a few weeks ago. I mean, they were in a spot where they had to go with their backup quarterback for 2 starts and in a bulk of 3 games. And Malik Willis got the job done. It's just the way this game gets played.
Yep.
Defensively, I like what I saw, though. They, especially that defensive front, Mike. I mean, I tweeted this out on Monday, but the Packers very suddenly are up to 40 sacks on the season. And they've had a bulk of those happen in 2 games. But they're finding ways to win, and it's multiple pass rushers. Kingsley Enagbare, I mean, you cannot say enough about the fact that he got his first 2-sack game in a 3-play span. You're seeing a guy like Brenton Cox Jr., who up until the Preston Smith trade had not played at all this season. Now he's up to 3 sacks. Aaron Mosby, I said this during the game, the guy's actually a really good zone dropper. He has multiple pass deflections now when he's dropping from the zone coverage when they're doing some of those simulated pressure looks.
Which is probably the biggest thing he's had to learn, quite frankly.
100%.
In terms of his transition, the college player he was to the player that the Packers are trying to develop him into in the NFL.
And keep in mind, this is a guy that at one point in his college career was a safety. So you're finding ways to use these guys' skill sets to your advantage when they've changed them into a pass rusher and things like that. So be that as it may, the Packers found a way to get out of Seattle with the victory. It was great being in that locker room the first time. The locker room that there has been so much sadness and so much disappointment. The last, I'll never forget that 2014 game. With Tramon Williams, understanding what that meant for him and where he was going to be going after that, and guys that felt like they were right there and didn't get it. Not that this makes up for it.
No.
But for a place that the Packers hadn't won in 16 years, to play the way they did and to finish a game 30-13 over a team that is 8-6 and still in control of their destiny for the playoffs, there's a lot there to be proud of, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take care of some sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right, the Packers are 10-4. The Buffalo Bills went into Detroit and beat a banged-up Lions team that continues to get more banged up with each passing game. So the Lions' long winning streak is snapped. They dropped to 12-2. Minnesota beat Chicago on Monday night, so they are 12-2. So the top 3 teams in the NFC West, 12-2, 12-2, 10-4.
NFC.
What did I say?
NFC West.
Oh, NFC North. Sorry. I was on the whole Seattle.
The Packers swept the West. Maybe that's what you were thinking.
Yeah, something like that. Top 3 teams in the NFC North. 12-2, 12-2, 10-4. What that means for Green Bay is that in the simplest terms, the Packers are 1 win away from clinching a playoff spot. If Green Bay gets to 11 wins, they are in the playoffs, regardless of anything else that happens. So Monday night against New Orleans, if the Packers coming back to Lambeau Field can get that win, it'll be a playoff spot secured. They can clinch a playoff spot before Monday night based on Sunday's results, but it would require the Falcons losing and either the Rams or the Seahawks also losing. We'll see what happens.
Say which teams
we'll see what happens there, and we'll certainly talk. We'll certainly talk more about New Orleans on our next show leading into the Monday night game. But I tell you, Wes, it's really interesting now. Not only is there a tie atop the NFC North at 12-2 between Detroit and Minnesota, but the Philadelphia Eagles are also 12-2 because they got a big home win over the Pittsburgh Steelers, the battle for Pennsylvania. So there is a lot to be decided here in terms of not only the NFC North championship, but just the seeding at the top of both at the top and the bottom of the NFC in terms of how the playoff seeding is going to shake out. There's still a long ways to go here before we're going to know exactly the lineup 1 through 7.
I do want to mention this because you mentioned all the scenarios in which the Packers can get in. Atlanta's hosting the New York Giants. You have the LA Rams are traveling to MetLife to face the New York Jets. And then Seattle has a real tough tilt against the Minnesota Vikings, though they get to stay at home for that one.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed what Matt LaFleur's message was with the media on Tuesday morning when he met with us, because he was asked about the playoffs and the possibility of clinching at the playoffs. And it wasn't trying to create a Jim Mora type soundbite,
right?
But basically made it clear, I don't give a hoot about the playoffs right now. There's 3 games the Packers need to win. They are heck bent on trying to win all 3 of those games and then seeing where the chips fall from there. Certainly this is going to be a tough game opponent on Monday night, although it sounds like Derek Carr will not be available for it, as he potentially could be out the remainder of the season based on some of the reports out there.
It'll be the Spencer Rattler show.
The Spencer Rattler show. But again, this was so critical for the Packers to win this game.
100%.
When you were looking at all these scenarios and all these variables in the New York Times simulator for the playoffs, everything gets exponentially clearer in terms of Green Bay's path to the playoffs now that they've beaten the Seattle Seahawks.
Yes.
They hold the tiebreaker over the Seahawks. They hold the tiebreaker over the Rams. The one they don't hold the tiebreaker of is Atlanta. But Atlanta, trying to claw its way back into the NFC South, if it would win the last 3 games of the year, would have to beat Washington, which affects the Packers. It also could potentially get them to win the division, which maybe that would require Tampa Bay to fall out of contention.
Yeah.
There's all these different things you have to consider, in addition to the fact that Kirk Cousins is still not playing very well right now.
Yeah.
Did not play well in Vegas. So
the Atlanta Falcons did not call a pass play on first down in the entire game last night, from what I understand.
You have Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
And
they
Kirk
handed
Cousins.
the ball off on first down all night long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I would have done the same exact thing. The other aspect of this, and just to bring it back to this past weekend's game, outside of Buffalo taking care of business in Detroit, holding off the Lions during whatever that was during the fourth quarter that happened, Green Bay didn't get a lot of help in terms of the Week 15.
Nope.
You had the Rams beat the 49ers. You had the Saints not being able to pull off the comeback in the upset of Washington.
Big time comeback. Made the gutsy call to go for 2 on after the touchdown on the last play of the game. They get the touchdown. They're down by a point. They decide to go for 2 instead of play for overtime. Washington gets the stop, and the Commanders survive and get their 9th win.
The Chargers didn't even bother showing up against Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Minnesota destroys the Bears. The Bears kept going for fourth down, and it didn't matter. Pittsburgh struggles against Philadelphia, and then obviously, like I mentioned already, as bad as Kirk Cousins played, still the Falcons outgunned the Raiders, who now seem to be in pole position here from the maybe Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes. So Green Bay did what it needed to do. It won the game, and here they are now at 10-4.
Yeah, 10-4.
By the way, may I mention this at all? Not to jump over you. Hopefully I didn't screw up Zach's camera's work there.
No, that's fine.
Kenny Clark said this in the locker room. I didn't even think about this. He actually said, it's like, it's been a minute since we won 10 games. And I thought about it for a second. I'm like, yeah, it has been. It's been 3 years since the Packers won 10 games in a season.
Yeah. 10 games in the regular
season. Sorry. They did
10th win was in the playoffs last year. 9.
They needed 18 to get him last year.
Yeah. But here's I'm glad you brought up a little bit about next week's schedule in the NFL, because I'm actually glad that the Falcons, even as much as they're struggling, I'm glad that they're playing the Giants.
Yeah.
I want the Falcons to beat the Giants because I don't want the Packers to have clinched their playoff spot before Monday night. I want the Packers to take the field Monday night at home in front of what hopefully is a very fired up, excited crowd to go out there and beat the Saints and clinch their playoff spot that way, not from scoreboard watching during the day on Sunday.
Yep.
And then you have a whole day on Monday to kill before you have to go out there and play. I'm hoping the Falcons beat the Giants, because if that happens, it doesn't matter what happens with the Rams and the Seahawks. The playoff spot's not clinched. The Packers would take the field on Monday night and just clinch it on their own. That's what I want to see.
If there's anything you know about me, and you've known me for pretty much all my adult life, and you've worked with me for almost a decade now, I am definitely a bird in the hand guy. I will take that playoff spot as soon as it will come. But that being said, I agree with you. And I think that's the same message that Matt LaFleur is preaching right now.
Yeah.
It's not about week 16. It's about the full breadth of an 18-game regular season and where that positions you for the playoffs. He already talked about it with Larry. He talked about it with you guys after the game. They want to be road warriors. They understand that barring some really bizarre circumstances here in the NFC North, which would have a multitude of layers to it if they could actually win this thing in the last 3 weeks, they're going to have to go on the road, and they're going to have to play in some hostile environments in order to make a Super Bowl run. They're embracing that. And I think one point I tried to make an insider inbox on Tuesday was whether it's the games in which they've won, they're 5-2 on the road, or the games in which they lost, in which they heard probably the most ruckus Ford Field Stadium we've ever heard before. Mm-hmm. The Packers now are experiencing all of this. And I feel like in the long run, for a very young football team, a team that is still very young, that is going to benefit them.
Yeah. Well, we will talk on our next show about a Saints team that is motivated, that is fired up, that may be as close to mathematically out of it as you can be, but they aren't playing like it. And we'll get into that in a couple of days.
It is bizarre, though. Looking, we were talking before we started the show. I'm doing the game program for this week, and we're on the normal schedule, even though it's the Monday night game. I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is one of their starting receivers right now. Quez wasn't even on the team 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, they had been beat up at certain positions. Not all of them, but certain positions. You got to get the job done, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Before that, be among the thousands of football fans cheering on their team's NFL draft picks by joining us April 24 through April 26 of 2025 for the NFL Draft. Visit greenbay.com/draft25 for more information. And with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.